Hold up, I ain't trying to stump, man, but the Yeezys jumped over the jump, man. I be in and out of arenas like I'm Scottie Pippen. Left my elbow in the pot, a la Vince Carter.
Bitch, you weren't with me shooting in the gym?
James Harden with the range on me, nigga, way back.
Coach, they won't knock me off my pivot, get it.
Been flowing stupid since Vince Carter was on some through the legs arm and a hoop shit.
And you can live through anything if magic made it.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, now you do.
Okay. Yes, sir. We are back. Round of applause for yourselves. This is your guy, Marcellus Ease. And of course, we got some great stuff on the docket for today, taking you off your daily algorithms and getting into some more nuanced stories. And as usual, we're going to get into it. The true history of the Black Mamba campaign, as news gets out that Michael Jordan was originally pitched the idea and that Kobe Bryant knew nothing of it. Also, The Matrix, aka Shawn Marion, gave his thoughts about this whole positionless basketball, as a lot of the culture coming out of that Salone conference, the analytical guys have taken over the league, but he points out one major flaw in their whole positionless ideology. Speaking of flaws, this media landscape that the athletes are all in is presenting brand new dynamics as guys are defending their legacies and certain narratives that took place with them. As Tracy McGrady newly has entered into this ecosystem, and he's been making waves, especially speaking on Kobe Bryant. Former Laker and multiple-time champion Brian Scott puts it all out there, revealing that TMac and Vince Carter was 10 times more talented than Kobe, but why didn't they finish their careers nowhere near Kobe's stature at the finish line? Again, this brand new media landscape presents brand new dynamics that a lot of fans as well as the players have always been chirping about. And speaking of landscapes, the NBA now has entered a new phase as we are in the post-player empowerment era. The NBA owners have slowly regained position over the players, and Carmelo Anthony as well as DeMarcus Cousins sit down and actually reflect of how today's players are paying the consequences for things that took place during their era. So this segment right here is going to be very interesting and multi-layered, as we'll hear from a number of different people as how the original Black Mamba nickname was for Michael Jordan's Air Jordan 19s instead of Kobe Bryant. And this whole time, the evidence was always in front of our faces, is that we never noticed. Again, there's a few layers to this story, as we'll hear from the man who covered this himself, Baxter Holmes, as well as Mark Vincil, who wrote the book Rare Air on Michael Jordan's life, as he spoke to his former teammate Tracy about Jordan's phobia of snakes. And that phobia is where this whole story ties in, because Nike in Michael Jordan's last year was pitching the idea of the Black Mamba because of the new technology on the shoes, the Tech Flex, where the Air Jordan 19 didn't necessarily need any laces and the materials resemble a snake. MJ, for the first time with the Air Jordan 19, that was the shoe where he didn't necessarily have any input on the design before the finalized product was initially bought to him. Eventually, after he agreed on the Air Jordan 19's design, he was pitched about the marketing side to it with the Black Mamba snake, and that's when the Nike executives had found out that Michael Jordan had a phobia of snakes. But due to timing restraints, Nike already had an ad campaign involving snakes in order to promote the shoe. So Michael Jordan just greenlit it, but they did not use the word Black Mamba. It's crazy when you think about it, because they ran a 2-page ad on ESPN, the magazine. So the evidence was always in front of our faces, but they did not use the word Black Mamba. This is where we're going to learn some of the inner nuances that goes on in Nike, especially with Jordan brand. Even though they are under the same umbrella, the designs and marketing is kind of kept under wraps when it comes to Jordan brand. That's where a lot of people believe there was always a miscommunication of just people not knowing that the Black Mamba idea was already pitched to Michael Jordan for the Air Jordan 19, and Kobe Bryant and his team had never found out. Another person to tie into sort of this quote unquote miscommunication is Luka's boy, Nico Harrison. But again, we're going to tie this all in. Let's first start off by hearing from Mark Vincil and Jordan's former teammate, Tracy, as they go into Jordan's phobia of snakes.
The
there was a time, by the way, around there, a little bit later, where, he was terrified of snakes. If you watch TV with him and a snake came on, he'd change the channel. He goes, if you write that, somebody's going to get killed because somebody's going to throw a snake one day. And, he was terrified of them.
Yeah, he was afraid of snakes.
Yeah. And they had they did a shoe that had snake skin on it. And he went nuts. It was all that had been approved. It was all the way to the end. He got the final approval. And he looked at it and he goes, you guys are nuts. This isn't off. I'm not. No one would believe. Anybody that knows me knows I'm afraid of snakes. You got to redo all of this. And they did it, and there aren't many. I don't think there's anybody else that ever took the business as serious as he did.
Michael Jordan did take the business of just selling his shoes very seriously, but the Air Jordan 19 was the very first time he didn't really participate on the same level as the previous 18 versions of the Air Jordan. So the whole marketing campaign around the Black Mamba, because of the text fleck technology, it presented a concept that didn't really fit with his personality, with just snakes overall. And when you look at Kobe, we all know he doesn't have the personality to follow behind someone. Even though he did come into the NBA with the bald head, chewing the gum like Jordan, moving like Jordan on the court, we seen him after a while form his own identity after the media just kind of painted the narrative that he's a Jordan copycat, growing out the afro and becoming his own man. And in 2003, when he was going through that trial in Colorado and being inspired by the Kill Bill movie with the Black Mamba scene, that's where originally the Black Mamba was born. It was sort of organic because basketball became his refuge. He basically ingratiated himself in the Black Mamba character. Remember, he was flying back and forth between his trial and just keeping up and playing in the Laker games. And that's where we saw him have that stretch of just dropping 40 points a game. It's crazy when you think about it because he only signed with Nike just a few months before he had that incident in Colorado where he got accused of certain things. The very first time the word Black Mamba and Kobe Bryant was associated in the general public was in a 2005 edition of ESPN the magazine. Then in 2006, he had a slam cover, not necessarily holding a Black Mamba, but just holding a black snake. Still to this day, people believe that his team, as well as Kobe himself, did not know about the Black Mamba marketing campaign being pitched to Michael Jordan. Definitely MJ knew. But again, the way things work at Nike is that the people at Jordan Brand, from marketing to shoe design, everything is really kept in-house. Nico Harrison was one of the major figures at Nike the time that Kobe Bryant had signed, and he was one of the main figureheads for Kobe as that relationship was forged. Nico Harrison even stated no one at Jordan Brand even told him that the Black Mamba campaign was ever pitched to MJ for the Air Jordan 19. But I'll be further elaborating on Patreon of Michael Jordan's deal with Nike, the way the company kind of separated Jordan Brand from just affecting their stock price, mainly when it comes to their merchandising outside of the shoes. Because Michael Jordan did have a different vision versus Nike when it comes to the apparel side of his brand. But right here, Baxter Holmes, who's been killing it as of late, just revealing a lot of the details of what's going on with the Lakers, Jeannie Buss and LeBron James' relationship. And now he's uncovered this story with Kobe Bryant and the Black Mamba campaign being originally pitched to Michael Jordan. He further elaborates on the Nico Harrison dynamic and just how this whole story unfolded. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
Oh, there was a lot that was really fascinating. I mean, look, the first time that I saw the ad for the Air Jordan 19 that had the snake wrapped around the shoe, it was really captivating and wanting to understand kind of the backstory of how it came about, and then learning more about that. Jordan was afraid of snakes. Well, if he was afraid of snakes, how did this ad ever even come out? It doesn't make sense really. And then learning that most of the ideas for the designs for his shoes were from him, but this was one that came from the design team. There was also the big question at the end, did Kobe ever know about it? And multiple people who I talked to who worked with Kobe closely during his time at Nike and then throughout his career told me that he didn't. That when I shared the advertisement with them, they said that this was their first time seeing it. And then they just shared comments about, if he had known about this campaign, he likely wouldn't have pursued his own Black Mamba campaign. But it ultimately ended up being, just another link in the endless chain of connections between them. But Nike officials emphasized that they were separate thoughts, separate ideas, separate campaigns. When they started the design for the 19, they weren't sure when he was going to retire. That was 2002 when they were starting on the design. And the timeline for these shoes, really from concept to launch, is about 18 months. So there's quite a bit of time that goes on between now and then. And they weren't sure if this was going to be the first shoe, Air Jordan, that was going to happen after that he would wear after his career ended, or if it would be the final one he wore before he ended up retiring. But ultimately, they got this material called Tech Flex, and it's kind of braided sleeving. It's meant to kind of conform to whatever fits around it. And when Nike people were kind of examining it, and part of the reason that they were looking at it was because they were thinking about the idea of making a futuristic shoe that didn't have laces. And so they're sitting there, they're looking at the material, and some people in the room thought, the braided sleeving, it kind of looks like scales of a snake. And people knew that Jordan had been referred to in the league as the Black Cat. And so they were thinking like Black Cat, Black Snake. Some people looked up like, what's the most, as I was told, like what's the most badass snake there is? It naturally led to the Black Mamba. And what they thought at that time was like, wow, we have synergy magic here. MJ, Black Cat, Black Snake, Black Mamba, like the braided sleeving, we're going to make like something really, really special here. So they thought they had kind of captured magic in a bottle, and thus began ultimately what was the concept that led up to the advertisement for the shoe.
Once again, the Air Jordan 19 was the very first shoe that Michael Jordan did not necessarily participate before the final product was presented. He was playing for the Wizards at the time. That's when he made his second return to the league. And quiet as kept, he was trying to work out a deal with the Washington Wizards owner at the time to eventually pursue ownership. But right here, Baxter Holmes gets into the Nico Harrison side to this story. As Kobe Bryant, when he left Adidas and signed with Nike in the summer of 2003, he was the main person working alongside Kobe in that relationship. So right here, we're going to get insight to how this whole Kobe Bryant and Black Mamba character alongside Nike came about.
Well, my understanding is that his interest initially came from watching, as he's recounted before, watching Kill Bill Volume 2. There's kind of a famous scene in the film where a Black Mamba snake is introduced as part of it, an assassination to somebody else. But there's kind of a monologue that's given about the snake and how deadly it is and everything like that. The film came out, I want to say in April 2004. He saw it, and he ultimately ended up adopting it, giving himself the nickname. He said the way that the snake kind of attacked and whatnot, it reminded him of himself. And in the years ahead, he really, it became the persona that he adopted, calling himself that. The first kind of image that it came years later where he was with a snake was on the cover of Slam magazine, and it had him with a snake. It was a real snake. It wasn't a Black Mamba. It was a non-venomous snake in the May 2006 issue, and it said Kobe Cold-Blooded. And Eric Avar told my former colleague Nick DePaula that it was I want to say it was I don't have the story in front of me. I want to say it was the Zoom 3s or something like that. But it was in the years ahead, you started to see more and more Kobe shoes with Nike that had snake skin kind of texture or references in the shoe with the release. And so really it was off and running. And then obviously now today, the Mamba mentality is deeply linked with Kobe. The Black Mamba is synonymous with him. It's a global legacy and a brand and all of that. But this is, in some ways, it's kind of an interesting look back in history and understanding also the way kind of advertising worked. What I was told was that Jordan, by the time he, I guess, expressed to Nike officials that he didn't like snakes and wasn't necessarily comfortable with it, the launch was about to happen. And he was told, I was told that, like, look, if we pull out now, if we try to change the campaign, we could risk the launch of the shoe, of the Air Jordan 19. And so he ultimately, I was told, agreed.
And for those of you who are watching the visual version, this is the ad that was ran on ESPN, the magazine. They did not use the word Black Mamba, but the evidence was always kind of sort of in our faces the whole time.
To let this one advertisement go out, and then they needed to pivot on the entire campaign, and you never saw snakes that were anywhere a part of it again. One thing I wanted to note, based on the quote that you just mentioned, I had a hard time believing initially that like there was an idea that within Air Jordan, and then Kobe has his own, and that there was no crossover. Nobody potentially sharing information or saying like, hey, there was a Black Mamba thing for MJ or whatever, and Kobe, just so you know. But somebody explained to me that, Air Jordan, the division within Nike, is kind of like a black box. They don't really share a lot, within respect to like the rest of Nike. And that part of that is Jordan himself. He's very competitive. He doesn't want the ideas, the information, all of that, like he's as competitive about his shoes being the best as he is about everything else in his life and as we knew him as a player. And so, when people said to me, like, look, it's not like that information just made its way over the rest of Nike and was like, open for everybody to see. Like, if there was something within Air Jordan, it stayed within Air Jordan, and that was that.
Again, when it comes to the apparel side, Michael Jordan had a different vision for his brand. He wanted more lifestyle, more higher quality garments. And that's something that Nike wasn't necessarily on board with. Some of you can go ahead and look up that video of Michael Jordan right after he retired in 1998 when he appeared on Oprah and he was showing off some of the clothes. You can tell from that interview, they wanted lifestyle. They wanted everyday casual wear to be associated with Jordan brand, not just the shoes. And going back to what Baxter Holmes just said right here with Michael Jordan being competitive, not just on the court, but when it comes to business. Kobe Bryant had the same mindset. He achieved a lot right away once he retired. And make no mistake about it, he was on his way to bigger and better things, as he did have intentions of leaving Nike right before his death. As he had that meeting the following Monday, the prototypes of his shoes are already out there. Matter of fact, I covered it in a segment I'll link in the description below. But Kobe Bryant was making moves, opening up that academy also. We were eventually going to be on the way of remembering him for more than just being a basketball player on the court, and just giving him the same praises for his business moves. Let's not forget, after his passing, his wife even aired out publicly issues with Nike. So the relationship before and a little bit after his death was not necessarily on good terms. Eventually, his wife, the estate, came to an agreement. And right here, Baxter Holmes touched his base on Kobe Bryant's shoe sales, coming right behind Michael Jordan, and the hierarchy, or you could even say totem pole, of just MJ being number one when it comes to that. And then there's some distance with Kobe Bryant being number two, as his sales have gone up almost 5 times since after his death. It's a weird thing with human nature, because we've seen it with musical artists. Once they pass away, their memorabilia, their music, it's remembered a lot different. But make no mistake about it, Kobe Bryant's shoe sales right now, that Mamba brand, it's worth a lot to Nike.
I don't have the figures, but I would feel confident saying that Kobe is number 2. That there is a gap between Jordan and everybody else. I mean, that's the most successful shoe line in the history of athletic apparel, and maybe apparel. It's such a towering success. It's extraordinary. But I can't, beyond Kobe, you mentioned some of the others. I don't know. They kind of all run together. So I would say it's probably Kobe.
I mentioned
number 2.
KD and LeBron. I was asking about their line, and KD and LeBron and what they bring to the table. Just wanted to know, it's not even comparable, is it?
Certainly in compared to the 2 that we just mentioned, I think there's long story short, I think there's a pretty significant gap, certainly between 1 and 2, which I would place Kobe, and then I think between 2 and the rest of everyone else.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, but Kobe had big plans post-retirement, and he was not taking no breaks. I do believe he was gonna kind of initiate a paradigm shift, because he had some big time investors willing to shake up the industry with just the direction he was gonna take when it comes to athletes partnering up with certain entities to actually produce and sell their own shoe. Again, you guys could check out that segment. I'll put in the link in the description below under the video references. But going back to the story right here, Michael Jordan did not want anyone to know that he had a phobia of snakes. Because remember, he's a competitor. On the court, he does not want guys hissing at him, trolling him. It's probably one of the reasons why none of this information ever got out. And Baxter Holmes touched on it.
Look, it's my understanding that this was one of his phobias, and that MJ was deeply concerned about this getting out, and about potentially opponents using against him. And I was thinking in my head, like, could you imagine if people knew at the time when he was a player that he had this phobia of snakes. Like, would you have other players hissing at him, or people in the crowd doing that, or making snake references or something like that? Like, it's kind of amazing that he kept it quiet for so long. But I don't think that he had any regrets about passing it up. It was something that he was deeply uncomfortable with ultimately. But it was too close to the launch for him to pivot. I mean, I've heard from people on all sides of it in the last 24 hours or so, and people have found it to be a fascinating story. I mean, it was really, I think, jarring for some people to see the actual ad, because they had never seen it before, and they didn't know the backstory of how it ever came out, given MJ's fear of snakes, and that lingering question of kind of, did Kobe know, or anything like that. So there's some interesting layers to it on that front. But again, people have been adamant to me that Kobe didn't know about it, that if he had known, he potentially wouldn't have pursued his own Black Mamba campaign. But anyways, it was a really interesting and fun story to work on.
It's very understandable that Michael Jordan wanted to keep his snake phobia under wraps, because things were very different back then. You couldn't admit any kind of thing that looks like mental illness. It's not like today where players kind of brand themselves around that, like DeMar DeRozan and others. Matter of fact, I don't even know why they do that, because they are in a gladiator sport. So any kind of weakness, guys are going to troll you on the court and try to throw you off your game. This is one thing about today's players I really don't understand, admitting that they have some sort of mental illness, while at the same time the franchise is relying on them to be a leader and they're paying them the most money. You ever notice that none of these guys claim mental illness when they're in their very peak prime years trying to get that max contract? It's always after they sign the max contract, and they're probably not going to get another one. That's when all this whole branding, mental illness, for the gladiator sport that they're in, that shit doesn't make any sense. Even if it's true, there's no real reason to even admit this shit. But it is what it is. Fascinating story. It's always great to get a sneak peek of what's going on behind the curtain, as Baxter Holmes has been killing it as of late with all these stories. And this is truly a very unique time and space, as there's many platforms for people to get their voices out and add a little bit more nuance to these NBA stories. So as NBA fans, we've been hearing a lot about positionless basketball, something that has really trickled down from that Salone Conference, aka the headquarters of the analytical crowd when it comes to the NBA or just overall sports. Allegedly, the mid-range is dead, even though in that time frame, Jimmy Butler has made the NBA Finals twice, Kawhi Leonard has won the NBA Finals, Jokic has won the NBA Finals, he utilizes the mid-range. Also Giannis, who doesn't even shoot three-point shots, and finally SGA, who not only completely dominates the mid-range, but he also is 100% an on-point playmaker around that high post area. But with that said, in more modern times, we're seeing Zion Williams play point forward. Same thing for Cooper Flagg, Jalen Johnson. Today's players do have the ability to play point guard, but just because you do have the ability does not mean you should 100% of the time. And that's where we're seeing that exact situation kind of run into a wall when it comes playoff time. Paolo Banchero does not look as effective. Jalen Johnson, we have yet to see him in the playoffs, but that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, if he could actually lead a team and get deeper into the rounds at that point forward position. Anthony Edwards is still trying to get over the hump and get into the finals. His decision making has improved, but he's still trying to get over that one last hurdle and just involve his teammates a lot more, sort of in a similar way that SGA does, and even Jason Tatum. Matter of fact, Tatum took quite a while to be the playmaker that we saw in that 2024 finals, and something that doesn't get said too much, the Boston Celtics had went out and made sure that they had 5 starters who could not only shoot, but could attack closeouts and make really smart decisions. Again, because a number of players coming into the league with point guard abilities does not necessarily mean that they can get you into certain rounds deep into the playoffs when they're going up against teams who have multiple players who are in sync defensively. LeBron James, as talented as he is, and especially when it comes to his IQ, took quite a while even after winning 2 MVPs to get over the hump. Devin Booker had his most successful season when he had a sort of over-the-hill Chris Paul alongside him. And the biggest example that doesn't get talked about too much, that shows that not every player who actually has point guard ability could be leading you deep into the playoff rounds is the Paul George and Kawhi Leonard playoff series in the bubble going up against Jokic. The Clippers didn't have a point guard to get these guys the ball in their spots, and eventually there was too much responsibility on those two players to get the whole team involved while at the same time maintaining the scoring and playing well defensively. That ended up getting them caught up as they blew a 3-1 lead going up against Jokic. That series right there does not get talked about in those type of terms enough. The Clippers spent the following seasons trying to get some sort of traditional point guard on that team. But Sean Marion, aka The Matrix right here, talks about some of this positionless basketball, and low-key he really means a lot of the culture that's coming out of that Salone conference affecting the on-court product. But at the end of the day, the positionless basketball gets exposed when you start getting into the second round of the playoffs, the conference finals, and the NBA finals. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
So what's up? I've been watching so much basketball the last 4 or 5 days, and from every level, youth, high school, college, and pros. And one of the biggest things, I think, with all this positionless basketball, I think we have forgot to truly define the positions again. I know with a lot of these players being versatile and playing more than one position, you still got to go back to the basics of understanding what a true point guard is, what a shooting guard is, what a small forward is, what a power forward, and what a center is.
Now also, let me say this. When they talk about positionless basketball, you notice that they only talk about it on the offensive end. But what about defensively? When you see players like Luka Doncic doing what he does, completely killing it on the offensive end, we never tend to hear the Salone Conference guys mention how much for the lack of defense it takes away from the offense. Again, we're still yet to see a very heavy analytical team win the NBA championship. The Golden State Warriors were formed by Jerry West, who has a basketball mind, keeping Klay Thompson on that team, them going along with Draymond Green, Harrison Barnes in the mid-range. Then eventually Harrison Barnes was replaced by KD, and the Warriors utilized the whole court. Again, the people from the Salone Conference never mentioned in the same era that they said the mid-range is dead, that Jimmy Butler, SGA, Giannis, Jokic, and Kawhi Leonard making the finals. Take that for data.
Now, so understand it. I mean, going back to just to define those positions itself, but then there's anomalies, of course. There's anomalies, and there's guys who going to exceed those positions by far. But when I say this to say because, you know what I'm saying, like you got a lot of people that's out of position, out of whack, they just can't, you know what I'm saying, they're cutting it for us to be in positions that they're not comfortable in. And they can get comfortable over time, yes, but we're forcing the issue because it's positionless basketball with no plays, no organization, none of that stuff being had, though. That's the narratives right now, and that's the game. And you're going to see a lot of teams in the postseason and in March Madness that's going to lose because they don't have the traditional mindset. They turn the ball over like 40 going north. So, like, listen to what I'm saying. This is the part where we got to get back to truly defining what these guys and what you're able to do on the floor in the position, but then you can exceed those. And there's, you know, like I said, you can get better. You ain't got to just be limited to one position. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is just learn the fundamentals of what those positions do. And then shoot for the stars, aim for the stars. But we got to get back to that.
Well, you heard it from the Matrix himself, NBA champion, multiple time All-Star. I mean, he has plenty of seasons where he's averaging well over 2 steals a game. But going back to what he said, we're really mainly seeing the results of positionless basketball not working once you get deep into the playoffs, and especially at the point guard position with the amount of turnovers, guys not getting easier offense. Of course, the game gets slowed down. It's more of a half-court situation. Referees tucking in their whistles. The people coming out of the Salone Conference, they get quiet around that time. Your analytics begin to look compromised and predictable. But it is what it is. Pay attention to the teams with the younger stars that are on the come-up. The Jalen Johnsons, the Paolo Bancheros, Zion Williams playing that point forward, Cooper Flagg. How well will this work when these guys begin to get into the second round conference finals, Could they even be in position to get that far into the playoffs? This is where we begin to see this ideology just unfolding, especially at that point guard position. The lack of organization, the flow of the offense, the game is slowed down a little bit. The referees tucking in their whistles. We'll see though, time reveals all. So 3-time NBA champion Byron Scott, who has a long history of Kobe Bryant since when he first entered into the league, all the way into coaching him towards the end of his career, had made some comments about how Kobe's work ethic, that Mamba mentality, got him into new heights that even more talented players like Tracy McGrady and TMac could not reach. And in this segment, we're going to get into it, as this is multi-layered. Not only it reveals the true greatness of Kobe Bryant, but it also ties into something that the fans have always talked about, whether it be in the high school gyms, the barbershops, the lounges, at work, etc. As to why the careers of Tracy McGrady and Vince Carter sort of left the feelings that things fell short when it came to competing on the highest level. Vince Carter had a level of athleticism you can't really coach, mix that in with great offensive talent, and Tracy McGrady was equally as gifted, minus the athleticism, but he couldn't get past the first round being the leader of 3 teams, the Raptors, Magic, and the Houston Rockets. So with them making a lot of noise in the early 2000s, it kind of felt like the Penny Hardaway effect, minus the injury, because we never got to see these guys go deep into the playoffs consistently and perhaps make an NBA Finals. Byron Scott a few years ago originally made comments about how Kobe's work ethic got him past guys who were more talented, such as TMac, Tracy McGrady, and there's another name I'm gonna throw out there that some of us might get uncomfortable with, but it is the truth, Allen Iverson. We're in a very interesting landscape today with this media environment where you can hear directly from the players, and some of the sentiments that have always been felt behind the scenes sometimes come out. But we're going to get into it. As first, we're going to hear from Byron Scott as he talks about playing with a young 17, 18-year-old Kobe just coming into the league, assessing his talent level at the moment, and his mentality, that Mamba mentality, that eventually getting him past certain guys, almost leaving them as an afterthought that were more talented than him. Again, we're going to go through this layer by layer before we hear the response of T-Mac and then Byron Scott. There's definitely a lot of nuances in between the lines to this story.
Well, those last 2 years of coaching Kobe was, and I tell people, even though we didn't win, we had such a young team and we were rebuilding, it was 2 of the most fun years I've had coaching.
Yeah.
Because again, we got reconnected, and we got reconnected on a different level, because now he's not that kid anymore. The maturation of Kobe Bryant went from that kid to this young man to this icon.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I was able to see all of that and be a part of the beginning and a part of the end. Just watching from afar, from the middle, and just watching how he's grown into this player that I thought he could be, or thought he would be, but he even surpassed a lot of the things that I thought he would be able to do in the NBA. One of our conversations, we sitting on the bench, and I said, "What do you want to accomplish in this league?" He said, "I want to be one of the greatest players of all time."
Now, he said that while you were coaching?
No, he said that while I was playing.
Playing with him.
So a 17-year-old kid.
Yeah.
I want to be one of the greatest players of all time. And I knew he was different from just being with him on the bus and everything. He wasn't, looking at the funny papers in LA Times. He wasn't looking at the sports session. This guy was looking at business and all this other stuff. He was looking at everything that a 17, 18-year-old kid wouldn't be looking at.
Now, let me add this here. If you look at Kobe Bryant post-retirement until his death, he was on his way of just being as of a competitive businessman and just overall mogul. He won awards for his basketball story. He opened up Mamba Academy. And also, something that doesn't get talked about too much, he was on his way to leaving Nike and just partnering up with a couple of VCs to get his own shoe produced. The prototypes are out there. So make no mistake about it, over time, we were actually going to remember Kobe for being a mogul as much as a basketball player, just the way he was moving. That same competitiveness, that same Mamba mentality, he was applying outside of the court, and it was right away.
Yeah.
So I knew he was different.
Yeah.
And I knew he had his head on right. So when he told me that, and I had been already with him a few months, and I've seen his work ethic and everything, and I looked at him, I said, "You will be." I said, "You will be. The way you work and your talent," I said, "you're going to be one of the best." But did I know at the time when he retired or when he finished playing that he would have been the third leading scorer in NBA history when he stopped, that he would have had 17, 18 All-Star appearances, MVPs, 5 championships. I never saw that coming.
Yeah.
But I knew he was going to be great.
Now, Brian Scott's not the only person to say the same thing. They never saw that coming because Kobe didn't necessarily have the speed, the athleticism. He had talent, but even longtime Laker trainer Gary Vitti, who saw the 80s Lakers, all the legends on that team, he was there for the Shaq and Kobe days. But even he stated that the Lakers giving away a talented center like Vlade Divac for Kobe, he didn't necessarily see the talent right away. He knew Kobe had the work ethic, but he didn't see the talent, just him jumping out of the gym like Vince Carter or just offensively gifted like a TMac. That's where the Mamba mentality comes in. And sometimes the Kobe stands, we all know that's their mans. They're going to ride and die for him, but they sometimes paint the narrative as if Kobe was Penny Hardaway when he first came into the NBA. And that was not the case. He was talented, but that's the genius of his legend, that Mamba mentality, that grind day in, day out. Eventually you get past the players that were considered more talented than you, like a Vince Carter, T-Mac, Allen Iverson. Kobe in a way has become one of these legendary NBA players whose storyline is kind of tricky because people will tend to underrate him and overrate him at the same time.
Worked out with him quite frequently.
Yeah.
Talk about his work ethics.
Well, you know what? There's 3 people in my lifetime that I admired on how hard they worked. Jerry Rice, Walter Payton, Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
And his was legendary, Kobe, as far as he never worked out just once a day.
Oh.
Like you just said, he would get up at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Or he said, meet me at a gym at 4 a.m. And he would work out for 2-3 hours lifting because he knew he had to get stronger. You had to get bigger. You're a basketball player, just get stronger, right?
Yeah.
Then he would go eat breakfast, and then he'd come back and he'd make 500 shots. So he'd be there another 2 hours. Then he'd get ready for practice, right?
Yeah.
He'd go through a 2.5 hour, 3 hour practice like it's nothing. Then he'd go have lunch and blah, blah, blah. He'd chill out for another hour. Then he'd come back at night and work out again. And it was crazy to me because he had his method of it was scientific, because he was like, B, if I work out 3 times a day and all these other guys who are so-called great players work out just for practice, they just work out that 1 time a day.
Now, those so-called guys Kobe was making reference to is AI, Vince Carter, and T-Mac. Make no mistake about it.
He said, over a 5-year period, they can't catch me. I've worked out that much. I've worked on my body. I've worked on my footwork. I worked on my shot. So 5-10 years from now, they can't catch me. They that far behind. And I never thought about it until they explained it to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was a guy that in the summertime, to the gym, lift weights. Go to the track, I'll run for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I had my boy Henry Hines, right? Then I go play. And that's equivalent to 3 times a day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I never thought of it or never put it in the type of method that he was talking about. And I just thought it was ironic that, a young man got it that quickly. He understood that if I worked out harder and longer and more than the guy who's supposed to be on my level, sooner or later, he won't be on my level anymore.
Wow. Just think of it like this. When you think about the all-time greats or even top 10, of course, people mention Kobe's name in there. But do they ever mention Vince Carter, Allen Iverson, and Tracy McGrady? The guys who were definitely considered to have more raw talent than Kobe. Once again, that's the genius of the legend of Kobe Bryant, the Mamba mentality. The everyday person could apply this in their lives. He's probably the most relatable all-time great ever.
Wow.
And I mean, it was deep, but he was, as you know, he was that type of thinker as well. Kobe was extremely intelligent.
Yeah.
Extremely intelligent. So he just said, scientifically, if I do this, you can't catch me.
Yeah.
And he was right.
And it worked.
And I tell people this all the time too, Kid Jay. Kobe Bryant was not the most talented player that I've seen on a basketball court. Tracy McGrady was more talented.
Now this right here is nothing controversial, which is absolutely insane nowadays because you say the truth, all of a sudden, everyone gets in an uproar. These comments right here is what really started the back and forth between Tracy McGrady and Brian Scott. And you gotta wonder with T-Mac and Vince Carter just entering the media space. Why are they choosing now to react when these statements were made 2 years prior?
Vince Carter was more talented.
Yeah.
But, and this is no disrespect to those two, because I love both of those guys. You know, VC, unbelievable. Tracy McGrady, unbelievable. Both Hall of Famers, no doubt about it, right? But they didn't have that that Kobe had.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's why when he would go against those guys, he would shine.
And the Mamba mentality concept basically got proven right every time he went up against those guys. Kobe faced Vince Carter 31 times and won 20 of the games. And the same thing for T-Mac. He bested him about 14 times to 7.
Plus the fact that when he went against those guys, it was like
he looked for those guys.
Yeah, he looked.
Yeah,
you know, that was his motivation.
Yeah.
He looked to play against the best guys.
Yeah.
LeBron, no, I'm guarding him.
Yeah.
You don't see superstars today say, I want the best player on the team. I want to guard him.
Yeah.
And we played a game against Orlando when they had Tracy McGrady. Tracy had 26 at half. We go in at halftime. I'm like, hey, man, the guy that's guarding him, you guys got to do it. Kobe said, Coach, I got Tracy. I got Tracy. Tracy ended with 30.
4 points.
4 points in
Probably
second
all
half.
at the free throw line.
4 points second half. So that was his mentality. That's why he's one of the greatest of all times.
Now keep in mind, during that era when T-Mac had dropped to 26 points at halftime, most of those games ended with a final score of just 78 to 80 or 76 to 73. You had to have been one hell of a player to drop 26 points at half in such a physical era of the NBA, which is the early 2000s. That's how much raw talent T-Mac had. But again, fast forward in recent times, T-Mac must have been made aware of these comments, and he stated some people don't know how dumb that shit sounds. And of course, Brian Scott is going to respond. That's the beautiful thing about all these guys having their own mediums to get their voices out. But Brian Scott isn't saying anything crazy that hasn't always been said about T-Mac. Many NBA fans have always heard the rumors of T-Mac just being so talented that if he practiced just a little harder, he would get much further. You gotta love the current day media landscape, because right here, Brian Scott goes 10 toes down and confirms it.
Who are the some people you talking about? For real. Who's the some people you talking about? And then,
how do you take it? Are you taking it that he's referring to you, or is he referring it to?
I'm not taking it anywhere. I'm just saying be more specific. If you're talking about me,
these
say me.
Ain't gonna be specific,
right? Which is cool. And I ain't never had a problem with T-Mac. But the other thing I would say, which is one of my boys' favorite lines, stop me when I'm lying.
Yeah.
Facts.
Stop me
when
I'm
I'm lying. You are talented as hell. I've never said nothing different than that. Vince, talented as hell. What I'm saying is Kobe worked harder than anybody I've ever seen and got more out of his body and his self than any player I've ever seen. That's what made him the Black Mamba, right? I ain't taking a diss at T-Mac or VC. Both of those guys, I love both of them as basketball players, as people. They're unbelievable. They're Hall of Famers. But bro, if you gonna say something, say it. All I'm saying is that man got every little bit, every ounce out of his body more than any athlete I've ever seen in my life. That's all I'm saying.
The tank was empty. Okay.
And he said it when his last game. I left everything on the floor when I played this game. I gave this game everything I got.
Man, let me tell you something. These guys get very emotional when they hear certain things that they don't like. Vince Carter jumps way higher than Kobe. We know that.
Without a doubt.
T-Mac, for lack of better words, probably had a better bag than Kobe.
And the name right here they will never mention and want to say out loud because he is a beloved player. I gotta throw Bubba Chuck in there. Matter of fact, Allen Iverson even told the story himself of Kobe picking him up at the airport when the 76ers had to play the Lakers. And AI was about to go hang out, and Kobe said he's going to the gym. Once again, when we mention the all-time greats, especially when people get into these top 10 conversations, Kobe Bryant's name is usually brought up. But when you look at the talent level, it's amazing how VC, Allen Iverson, and T-Mac are not necessarily nowhere near that. They definitely did not even finish top 20.
But to Byron's point, why didn't y'all become Kobe? In the grand scheme of things, where his legend grew. That's the only man that has 2 numbers retired by a franchise.
Facts.
2 numbers that are Hall of Fame worthy numbers, whichever one he wore, even though he was the same person. But you can retire 8 in the Hall of Fame. You can put 24 in the Hall of Fame. Okay? So let it be known. Nothing was said against you personally.
Nothing.
It's the fact that this man did work harder than you. He get up at 4 a.m. and
He
work
worked
out.
harder than
while y'all were in
everybody
the
I've ever
club.
seen.
While y'all were in the strip club.
Hey, who is he talking about right here? Because Vince Carter and T-Mac are not necessarily known for that. But you know who is? Allen Iverson. He was definitely in the club with those big-ass entourages that he had.
He was working.
I didn't say all that. I was just saying.
Oh, damn.
I didn't know if you was in strip clubs. I'm just saying. I'm speaking totally basketball. That man. I'm speaking totally basketball. That again. Anybody that's watching Byron's Got Fast Break right now, tell me when I'm lying. Stop me when I'm lying. That's all I want to say.
Hey, by the way, T-Mac, we'd love to get you on the show. By the way.
Absolutely.
Come on the show.
Come over here and sit on right down here. Let's talk about it, brother.
Oh,
Because we would love to talk about your Hall of Fame career.
Exactly.
But also, okay, to that whole point. Now, T-Mac sat on the bench for a while in Toronto.
Yeah, his first 2 or 3 years, yeah.
And why was that? The hard work wasn't being put in. So that's the key. So your game speaks for itself.
Now that right there is some more behind the scenes things getting revealed. Again, this is the beautiful thing about this media landscape. We're getting great insight from some of the NBA personnel. When it comes to Tracy McGrady, NBA fans have always been hearing for years that he does not practice as hard because a lot of the talent that he has just comes so natural.
Yes, you ended up putting the work in, but then you realize the only way I'm going to get on this floor is by working and getting better and improving my game. But Kobe was always doing that.
Yeah.
Let me ask this. Just one last thing on the T-Mac is because he played in that era, and it looks like, because we had another story about him literally about 6 months ago, it looks like he's now always going to be compared to Mamba.
No, he's not.
Yeah, I don't think he's compared to Mamba.
Because he was in that era and he played that similar position.
I don't give a damn.
But I don't.
He's definitely not compared to Kobe. Same thing even for Allen Iverson, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Once again, when people start debating these top 20s, top 10 lists, do they even mention some of Kobe's peers from the early 2000s? That should tell you all you need to know.
But I don't think at least most people that I know that's in the basketball, they don't have that comparison.
Nope.
With those two guys.
These guys are tying themselves to Kobe because it makes for good reading or good memes or whatever.
Ratings.
Yeah, but no, stop doing that. That's one of the things I got upset about the last time.
Because he
y'all
said
didn't say none of this shit when he was alive.
Yeah, if he replaced Kobe, he would win rings as well.
You didn't say it when he was here, so he can defend the commentary.
You know, Tracy McGrady getting used to the media space. I believe his stark reaction to a comment by stating that, oh yeah, if I had Shaq, I would have won rings too. He may have not noticed that might be perceived as a slight against Kobe, just downplaying his efforts. Right now, that shit has come back to bite him in the ass. But welcome to the space, T-Mac, where the legacies of a lot of the players get re-examined with a very keen eye. So be careful. But it is what it is. The legend of Kobe Bryant is one of the more complicated discussions to have among the NBA fans, the inner circles around the league, the players, the coaches, personnel. But make no mistake about it, out of any of the all-time greats, Kobe Bryant may be the most relatable, especially with the Mamba mentality. Everyone could apply it to their everyday lives. So the NBA in recent years has gone through many changes, not just the on-court product with three-point shooting, the pace of play, but also in the back end with the franchise evaluations keep climbing higher and higher. These new owners don't want to buy into the league where their superstar players are just requesting trades or just having freedom of movement. And in recent years, these things have been slowly crafted out as NBA free agency looks bleak going from season to season. Former NBA superstars Carmelo Anthony and DeMarcus Cousins had a sit down where they talked about a lot of the changes throughout the leagues, teams moving off of superstars at a young age, even with them still being able to sell tickets and maintain their statistical numbers. Carmelo Anthony himself also verified the amount of equity that his draft class came into the league with. Guys like LeBron James with all the hype coming out of high school, Carmelo Anthony winning the national championship, and that was only added on top of the noise that guys like Allen Iverson was making just a few years prior, and just all the sway he had over his head coach Larry Brown when it came to the 76ers franchise. I've always stated in my previous segments that the NBA was at an inflection point between the power struggle of the head coach and the superstar player when Allen Iverson first came in, and the amount of power the players had actually superseded the head coaches once LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony came into the NBA with just all that sweat equity that they built on the amateur circuit. NBA teams since that point instantly gave the keys to the franchise to the young rookie stars coming in. And that was something that was not happening prior to, because even with Kobe Bryant just making his NBA appearance a couple years before, still had to bend the knee to his head coach and submit to that power dynamic of just coming off the bench. But in this sit down, Carmelo Anthony not only confirms having all that equity coming into the league, but also the NBA kind of pivoting towards more of an NFL style system where the owners and franchises have more leverage than the superstar players. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
And it was hard to reach back and talk to another player or young player, because we didn't have that. Nobody told us how to do this shit. We came in and ruffled the feathers and like kicked the door down. Yeah. And we made people look at like, oh shit, we gotta watch these motherfuckers right here. Everybody was scrambling when we came in the league. And we had to really make our mark. It was your team. It was you and your team. That's it. So it's easy to become a narrative, right? When it's just you, your team. Because I got to do the bulk of what I'm known for. So I'm not a I told you so type of guy. You know what I mean? But because you go through situations, the way that the situations is handled will never change. So you just know it's happening. It's happened before me, it happened to me, and it's gonna continue happening. That's just the nature of the beast.
They ain't showing no love.
So when you look at
this shit,
and it's even more quicker now. It's even more ferocious now because they don't have the patience no more. Because that money make you have less patience to deal with shit. If you ain't ready to go right away as a young player, you on a hot seat.
On to the next.
If you ain't producing, it ain't like you signed a 4-year deal and it might take you a year to get your feet wet, and the second year you come back, and the third year you start. Nah, hell no.
Yeah, those days are over in the NBA. Matter of fact, Trae Young and Luka, when they came in, they kind of set a new standard by the age of 22, already making the conference finals, multiple playoff runs, multiple all-NBA team appearances. I've noticed teams since then started to have less patience. And not only that, today the league is a lot younger. The situation with how many two-way guys teams could have, and NBA owners today, they're leveraging the global talent pool that's coming into the league or just trying to get into the league and sort of weaving out the veterans or just having certain contracts on the books long term. They can have a bunch of two-way guys going in and out, and they even have the second apron excuse why they don't want to have to pay guys. It's a tricky thing. Teams are definitely getting impatient. Paolo Banchero, he's coming down that pipeline where the Orlando Magic are going to have to reassess as certain tax implications become reality. Same thing for Ja Morant and Trae Young. They're not even well into their late 20s, and not only teams are ready to move off these guys, other teams are letting it be known we're not necessarily even interested in those contracts.
Y'all be ready now.
Y'all be ready to go now. So when you start talking about just the like how the game is going, is really fucked up on how the game is going. So I told a lot of guys, because you're in my position. I only can speak because you're in my position. Right. So I can talk to you because you're in my position. AD, Russ, CP. Told niggas.
Russ holding on though.
Russ holding on
a second, brother. Yeah.
And I'm just saying,
they put my guy on a non-guaranteed.
I'm just saying, you see it happen. You see it unfolding. You just look at what's happening in the landscape and you just see it unfolding.
Now, Melo's really good with his political talk. He's going to say things without necessarily saying things, but if I was to take a guess, the NBA owners have completely weaved out a lot of that player movement or just that player empowerment from the mid-2010s. Guys like Kevin Durant signing an extension in Brooklyn and quickly asking for a trade. James Harden himself forcing his way out of multiple teams. It's starting to look like the owners have carefully crafted the NBA infrastructure where even if a star like Ja Morant asks to leave his team, it's hard for other teams to even be interested because of the second apron rules and just how tricky it is to trade players trying to match salary for salary. Once again, the NBA historically has never liked free agency. The players in the 80s had to fight for over 7 years just to get free agency, but the first initial version of it was where if a guy left the team, that team would have to be compensated. And eventually in the 90s, that's the first time they really had real free agency where a guy could just walk away and the team where he would go to wouldn't have to necessarily worry about compensating the team for losing a player. There's always been a level of socialism when it comes to these NBA owners, the luxury tax system sharing that revenue, losing teams getting a first overall pick. There's always been a guaranteed floor of compensation in case things go wrong for these NBA owners. So player movement goes completely against that. And fast forward, just looking at the NBA today, all that shit is completely weaved out.
DeMar, Zach LaVine. Like this shit is about to start unfolding for a lot of them.
They get the new generation out quick.
Shit,
I mean, the old
Draymond.
generation out quick.
Draymond, you see the shit he said the other day, like, and that's real shit. I'm heart and soul of this shit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's facts.
I'm the heart and soul of the Warriors organization. Y'all ain't about to do that. Like, let's have a little bit more respect in that. If I'm a GM and I got a plan, and this is my plan, I got a solid plan, 4 years plan of me being the GM. Nothing could fuck my plan up. I don't give a fuck win, loss, indifferent. You can't fuck my plan up.
Right.
Now I can make little adjustments within you can't fuck my plan up. You can't fuck my overall 4-year plan up.
Right.
So to make these quick decisions like that, unless it's gonna change my trajectory of where I'm trying to go, I ain't pulling no triggers like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's happening now. The fans has an influence. The media has an influence. Money has an influence. And what's going on out here? Every other day, every year there's a trade. Like as far as like, should he or should he not be traded? Like the best player on every team.
Right.
It's like why are we going through that?
Now, Melo, you know why this is happening. The NBA owners have a great relationship with the media. They do push their agenda. Make no mistake about it. A prime example I'm going to give is when Woj used to say teams are going to run out of money after the first few days of free agency, which is not true. That's a narrative that benefits the owners as certain players rush to get deals and they end up taking less money. Matter of fact, I covered this in a segment. I'll put in the link in the description below. As Mark Termini, the person who helped LeBron James and Rich Paul form Clutch Sports, spoke on this dynamic. But in today's times, we're seeing the devaluation of just a collective of NBA superstars, unless you're on a Luka, Jokic, SGA level. It's mainly being done through the way the league is structured financially of how players could get paid. The media, of course, adds another dynamic to it. Also, to a lesser degree, the fans.
That's cool.
That's a little crazy.
It's cool.
That's crazy.
It's like,
That's
yo,
cool,
you mean
bro.
to tell me there's no value you can get out in the trade at the trade market that is more valuable as a franchise than LeBron's final years as a pro on your team?
Look, bro, listen. What he's doing, he's living long enough to be a villain. Like,
yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Like, that's what he's doing. Like, he's doing everything at the top, still at the top of the top. Like, still holding this league down. This league don't move without Bron. I don't give a fuck what nobody say.
That's a fact.
It don't move without Bron.
Absolutely.
Until he's gone, right? So his position in this game is bigger than just these wins and losses throughout the course of the season.
Yeah.
I got to hold. You're not coming against my plan. I got to get my body right. This is my plan, and I got to stick with my plan. So if you're gonna be mad at him leaving LA, fuck are you mad about? You see it writing on the wall, man.
Right. No, I mean
because of the influence that's out there.
Yeah.
Y'all pushing him out in a sense.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Y'all pushing him out. Y'all never accepted him in LA anyway from the beginning.
Yeah, it's true.
So he did what he did, being who he is, and did it his way. So the motherfucker should be at this point, year 23, 24.
23.
I should be able to do whatever the fuck I want to do. Like, if I want to go back to Cleveland, I'm going back to Cleveland.
I hope you do.
That situation when LeBron James, we're seeing plenty of pushback by the Lakers, especially with Jeannie Buss in that article that was released by Ethan Baxter of ESPN. A lot of the comments within that article was to devalue LeBron James. That should have been an eye-opener for the other NBA stars, particularly guys who are going through issues like Ja Morant and Trae Young. LeBron has definitely helped the Buss children be in position to sell that franchise for $10 billion because ever since their father passed away, they've been lost. They rank number 26 out of 30 NBA teams in total wins since their father had passed in 2013 till current day. And LeBron James, even providing all that great fortune, is still getting dragged through the mud by the franchise because at the end of the day, Jeannie Buss does not like the fact that LeBron James holds a lot of power within that franchise. That was another thing that was stated within that same article. Once again, if you look at the NBA historically, the owners never like players having too much power within their franchise.
I mean, speaking of a narrative, a guy like Cam Thomas, I mean, he literally just got waived today.
It's crazy.
Put under a narrative of
crazy.
And it's just like that. The kid got so much talent, bro.
Yeah.
Like, all he needs is the right coaching, the right system, the right way to harness his talent. Like, he's a productive player in this league. He's shown it. Waived.
It's crazy.
Not only was he waived, other teams had no interest into signing him. This is the very first time fans are seeing players who clearly have talent. Whether you believe Cam Thomas should be a starter or not, even if he came off the bench, he definitely could put the ball in the bucket. And he's coming off a favorable rookie scale contract. It's not like teams would have to break the bank in order to get the guy.
Waived.
It's crazy.
Why? Because they think he's selfish on an already ass team. Like, huh? Y'all ass, and you found a way to label somebody selfish?
You want him to be able
What's he doing?
You want him to be able to fit.
He's sticking out
there.
like,
I gotta go.
you want him to stick in with everybody being ass. Like,
20-point per game scores don't grow on trees.
You
man.
feel me?
Especially
Like,
when the team is already terrible. Yeah.
Consistently. And like I had a conversation about this before with Gil and them. Like, the narrative, like, it's just easy to average a lot of points on a bad team. That's not a real thing.
Right.
You don't see that all the time, bro.
Nah.
Like, there are cases, but you mean to tell me you think that a guy's averaging 28 a game on a so-called bad team, you think it's gonna drop to 12 when he gets on a good team? Like, you can't make me believe that that's not the case. Now, if the numbers support it, you shooting 38, you making a lot of points. Then he's probably a ball hog. He just jacking shots. The numbers are supported.
Right.
But we talking about a dude that's really getting to it. You flirting around 50%.
Yeah.
You the best player on a bad team. You getting all the attention on defense.
Yeah.
That's
And
not
still scoring.
That don't really add up to me. Like,
and at some point,
that's even harder to do.
It's harder to do.
Great point brought up by DeMarcus Cousins right here. The fact that his field goal percentage is so high, he's on a bad team, all the attention is on him, while at the same time he hits restricted free agency and no teams are interested. Sheesh. You know, the NBA is really headed towards an NFL style model. You can even look at their television deal. Every single team gets the same amount of money.
Coaching got to step in too, where it's like, yo, you are one of the best in your profession in the world at this. Like, shouldn't you be able to make this work for your team? Like,
I am. And I am. That's what he gonna say. I am.
Right.
I am. You know why? Because I just drafted 5 motherfuckers that I want to develop. Right. So I'm not in the rush to get where Cam want to go right now. I'm not in the rush. I am.
And you can tell what a kid mind at right now. He's chasing. He wants to be great, bro.
Yeah.
I'm not.
He ain't out here like he doesn't want to fit in, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I hope the kid get another chance, and
that's a really good narrative right there.
That's crazy.
But a kid like that gonna go overseas and become a fucking legend.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden it's like, oh well, why didn't he wasn't that good? Yes, he was.
Nah, he's good. And most
Yes,
teams,
he was.
most
He was
teams
that
out there
good.
know he's good though. Most teams know
Beasley had
Cam
the
is.
same similar
Bro,
situation.
it's a lot.
You know
It
what I
happens
mean?
a lot.
Lots
It
of
really does. It
guys.
happens a lot. It's a lot of talent that gets overlooked in this league based off narratives.
Mm-hmm.
And the narratives may not even be necessarily close to the truth. You know, now some of them,
Yeah.
hey,
Cam issue, the only issue that he has right now is he should have signed that 4-year deal.
he should have.
That's the only issue.
Mm-hmm.
He should have took that 4-year deal.
Absolutely.
You get what I'm saying? And this is a thin line between betting on yourself and being
Crapping out.
and being smart though.
Right.
Like you can still be smart and bet on yourself. You know what I mean? Like don't just bet all the way on yourself like that.
Man, some team is gonna pick him
Somebody else, another player who dealt with that, Dennis Schroeder, right?
Yeah.
Another player. And again, there's nothing wrong with betting on yourself.
I would say the same thing for Nerlens Noel, Reggie Jackson. There's been a few NBA players coming off of that rookie scale contract, and things kind of get funny in the light. Even Jonathan Kuminga going into that last year about to hit unrestricted free agency, the Warriors began to devalue him in the marketplace, not only benching him for certain games, but just making comments throughout the media. And now he's in Atlanta. We're seeing that there was plenty of talent there.
But be smart about betting on yourself too. So Cam, that's another thing. They saying the same thing. Brooklyn, Cam, you should have took this 4-year deal.
Right.
You ain't take the deal, so you're not part of our plan anymore.
Right.
And that's what he's dealing with.
And worse
also,
than
we
that-
can't have two of you niggas over here. We can't have you and MPJ over here. You know what I'm saying?
Shit, but why can't they make that work?
That's
why not put
I'm
some
saying this is the beginning of the year.
I'm saying,
Why can't you put talent
we
around those people?
think like that.
Yeah.
Fuck that. We about to get to it.
Right.
They not thinking that.
Now notice right there how Melo said the Nets are not thinking like that. AKA they don't want to have MPJ's contract along with Cam Thomas's on the books. That's all it is. The GM and the president, they probably have different players that they're kind of eyeing to fill up the cap. But it is what it is. The fans are seeing this season for the very first time that the era of the player movement is virtually gone. Anthony Davis, LaMelo Ball, Ja Morant, Trae Young virtually almost had no real suitors when rumors of them being on the trade block was made. There's been a lot of anonymous sources completely devaluing a lot of these guys, especially the ones that were eligible for brand new contracts, Trae Young, Anthony Davis. It's looking like the NBA owners have taken their power back. Carmelo Anthony, a player at the time when he was in the league, completely has sway on the direction of where his career has gone, and really he's spot on in sensing the fact that the power dynamic is shifting back into the owner's favor. Definitely interesting times that we're in. But I'll provide the link in the description below of my true NBA business story playlist. You guys can get a great timeline of a lot of these stories playing out. And I'm sure there's going to be more follow-ups to this very same dynamic. But that's all I have for today. You guys definitely check out the other true NBA story playlist. And until next time, you fellas stay safe. Peace.